What is going on, everyone? I'm DSP, and welcome to the March 31st, 2011 edition of Ask the King. Right off the bat, I just want to let everyone know, excellent questions this time around. In fact, I had a hard time choosing which ones I wanted to answer for this particular episode. So if you didn't get your question answered, don't feel bad. I mean, there were a lot of really interesting, good questions this time, so feel free to ask again if I don't address your question in the new thread that is now on TKOHD.com. I do want to say special thanks to, I'm going to say it wrong again, I know, Foos, I think, or however you say it. Thank you. I'm an idiot. Thank you for adding the new voting function on the Ask the King thread. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check it out on TKOHD.com. You can now vote up or vote down people's questions, and it did help me to pick and choose which ones I thought would be the most pertinent, like the answers that people wanted to hear the most. But also, I chose some that maybe people didn't particularly want to hear answered because I thought they were interesting. So it's a good tool for me to figure out, what kind of things people want to hear about. So thank you for adding that functionality. Let's get right to it, because we had so many questions. It's going to be jam-packed, and it's definitely going to be a two-parter this week. So let's get started. First question. Dear Phil, I was wondering if I could make you some fan art. I draw in an anime chibi style and would like to draw you. What I think would work is I would make a draft and send you a picture of it, and you could tell me, what colors to add and where to add them. Then I make a copy via computer, color it, and send it to you. After doing this, time after time for others, I decided, should you like it enough, I will give you full rights to use it as you please. Thank you and keep gaming. That's from Mr. Katamara. Well, Mr. Katamara, first of all, thanks. I appreciate the offer. There are lots of people who've done fan art, and if you check out my forums on TKOHD.com, there's actually an art section there, graphic design /art, and some people have put up pictures. And actually, a couple people have actually sent me some fan art, which is really neat. I'll probably be showing people that at a future date. But yeah, definitely. I mean, anything like that, what I would say is put it up on TKOHD.com and let me know through a PM that you've done it, so that I can go take a look at it, and we'll go from there. But yeah, it's great. If anyone does want to submit that kind of stuff, I could definitely use that in videos and things like that. So feel free to submit that kind of stuff, and that's what the forums on the website are for. Next question. Is a channel for playing old school games still on the radar, or has that idea been dropped? And that's from Dr. Wawi. Well, Dr. Wawi, it's not out of the question. The thing is, I kind of find myself very busy just with the new games that are coming out. And it's kind of hard. Someone made a really good point, and I didn't answer the question, but someone made a really good point on the Ask the King thread is, I say I'm going to play all the mainstream games, and but sometimes some of the best games aren't mainstream per se. So what I've been trying to do is any games that I even see that I'm interested in, I've been trying to play. In the interest of maybe catching a diamond in the rough per se that not everyone thought was going to be a good game. So I'm really busy. Like, I thought March, honestly, was going to be a slow month, and all of a sudden people are like, well, Phil, this game's coming out, and this game's coming out. As you know, if you've been following along, when I went to buy, when I went to buy WWE All-Stars this week at GameStop, Dynasty Warrior 7 came out at the same time, and I didn't even know that, so I bought that game. So it's kind of hard for me to find time to do other side projects. Like, a lot of people have said, Phil, why don't you do The Hateful Truth anymore? Phil, why don't you do classic games? And the answer is, right now, I'm pretty much busy every day with new stuff. There's so many new games coming out that I just don't have time to do that stuff. And so, I do understand that people are interested in other stuff, but right now I'm only one man, you know what I mean? Like, I would love to do a Hateful Truth on every game that I play. The problem is the Hateful Truths take a lot of time for the video editing and figuring out what I'm going to say and stuff like that. It's very time consuming. And the same would go to play retro games or to do something like that. It's a great idea, but when I'm playing 20 to 30 hour long games frequently, and I'm making, anywhere between 15 to 40 videos a day, it's really hard to find time to do this kind of stuff. So it's still on the table, a retro game kind of channel, but right now I'm so busy with the stuff that's just going on by itself that there's no time to do it. Now, that's not to say that later this year things might slow down. A lot of people have been saying during the summer it doesn't look like a lot of releases are coming out. If that's the case, then it's definitely a consideration. So we'll see what happens. Okay, next question. Hey Phil, my fiance and I are moving to the Republic of Korea, or South Korea as most people know it, next year. My question for you is, have you been to another country? And if so, what was it like? And did you enjoy experiencing another country besides your own? And that is from Run Devil Run 007. The only country that I've ever been to besides the United States is Canada. And I was there on business. It was a business trip. And although they let us do some fun stuff, like one night we went out to, there's this popular street where we were in Newfoundland, by the way, or Newfoundland, I forget how they pronounce it up there, but it's very different from the rest of Canada. A much colder climate. It's a fishing town, or a fishing area, and we were there during the summer, so actually it was the warmer side, but it was still kind of cold there. And they have this one famous street with, like, the whole street is just pubs. And so we went pub crawling when I had some food, we went pub crawling, stuff like that. But yeah, it was okay, but the problem was I was there with people from work, older people, much older people. I mean, we're talking people, who are like in their 40s, their 50s, and here I was in my mid-20s. And I'm like, I'm totally different crowd. I would have loved to break apart and just go meet people there and talk to people and drink and have fun. But unfortunately, I was kind of stuck with these people, so it is what it is. I was there for work. It was interesting. Definitely the culture was a lot different. The speech, even the way people talked, was definitely different than it is here in the Northeast of the United States. But I really didn't have too much time to absorb the culture. Now, I would love to travel someday and go to other countries. Of course, the problem then is the limitations with my back and stuff like that. So we'll have to see what happens. But interesting question. Thanks. Next question. This is a long one, so bear with me. Phil, I don't know if you heard about the recent announcement from Sucker Punch stating that Infamous 2 will have a creation mode. Instead of creating levels like in Little Big Planet, you can create missions and post them online. So basically Infamous 2 is going to have an unlimited amount of missions. So what's your opinion on this news? Also, because creating a mission in Infamous 2 looks a lot easier and less time consuming than in Little Big Planet, do you think you'll try to create one? And that's from JC15 YouTube. That's an interesting announcement. I didn't hear that because I'm so busy playing games. A lot of the times I don't have time to follow along the industry news. Seems interesting, and honestly, it seems like a really good stab at a way to make a game with high replayability. Right now, I think what a lot of these game studios are struggling with is making a game that not only is good the first time through, but a game that you want to play again. Like, for example, Uncharted 2. Amazing campaigns, but once I beat the game once, there's really no incentive to go back and play it again. Same thing with Infamous 1. The game was exceptional. Sure, you could go back and play it as like a light side or dark side and get the different powers, but besides just the powers, the story wasn't going to change, and so there was really not much incentive to play the game again. So something like this, maybe this will add new replayability besides something like a competitive multiplayer mode, which a lot of people say these games don't really need. It's an innovative idea, and I'm interested to see how they implement it. And I have to say yes, if it's not really time-consuming, like it could be with Little Big Planet, I might consider making some missions for Infamous 2. So we'll see what happens. Check my time here, okay. Next question. Hey DSP, since you worked hard in getting your business degree, and since you had a job for a while in that field, of business, how did you feel when you crossed over from working in the business field to playing video games professionally? What are the pros and cons of playing video games professionally as opposed to working in a business field? And he's saying not just the technical limitations, but also maybe personal things as well. And that's from Crime Chicadas. Good question. First of all, how did I feel when I crossed over? Well, first of all, if you remember, it wasn't really intentional. It was me losing my full-time job of 5 years because of the bad economy and getting laid off. So it was kind of like, well, there's really nothing to do right now. There's no other jobs to be had in that field. Let me just see if I can flip this hobby into something professional. Now, to be completely honest, I've been putting a lot of effort into this outside of my full-time job. It was almost like I had two jobs, and one I was getting paid for and one I wasn't. So really, it was like just trying to focus my effort on doing this. And it wasn't that hard because it was something I'd been doing already for 2 years. I've already become very popular on YouTube because of it. In fact, people from my previous full-time job had known that I was doing this on YouTube and were kind of impressed that I could juggle the two. So, was it a hard transition? Not really. It was more like, okay, well, this business thing that I've been doing for 5 years, I push it to the side and I'm going to focus on this over here and see where it goes. If anything, it was very nerve-wracking because I didn't know if anything was going to work out. I didn't know if I was going to find a way to flip this and make money out of it and be able to support myself. So it was a very nervous time, but at the same time I stayed positive, and because of that I think a lot of positive things have happened in my life as a result. Now, the second part of the question, what are the pros and cons of doing this professionally? Great question, because let me tell you, there's a lot of things that people don't know about being self-employed, okay? When you're employed by an employer and you're on salary and you're considered a full-time employee of a company, you get a lot of benefits that you might not realize. So, for example, number one, you have stable income. You know exactly what you're going to make each month. So it's not like, gee, maybe this month I'm going to do real well and then this month I'm going to do shitty. It's like you know what's coming in, so you can have a budget. You can base yourself off of that. Right now I have no idea. I do have a rough idea, but I have no idea how consistent it's going to be with what I'm making. So I could have an outstanding month in February, and then all of a sudden in March it really sucks, and now I don't know what to do because I didn't save enough money, or maybe it's nerve-wracking because I have to be over-conservative. I have to save everything that I make because I have no idea how much I'm going to make the next month. So right there, just doing that is very nerve-wracking. Being self-employed, because I'm not with an employer, I don't have health care. So right now I'm actually paying out of my pocket for health care, and it's insanely expensive. I'm paying over $300 a month for health care. Yeah. For people that don't know, that's how expensive healthcare is in the United States if you don't have a full-time employer who pays partially for it. It's fucking nuts. So, yeah, it's a really pain in the ass. And the way our healthcare system works, sure, I'm paying the $300-something a month, but if I get sick, I still have to pay more money. I have to pay for co-pays for doctor visits. I have to do co-pays for any drugs that I get, and I have to do co-pays for any surgery or operations, anything like that. So I'm still paying money out of my pocket even though I'm paying for health insurance. That's how our healthcare system works. It's fucking broken. And I feel bad for people who don't have healthcare. I don't know how you could survive in this country. I just don't get it. This healthcare system doesn't work. And that's why we're having such a crisis right now with our economy, with healthcare, with everything going on. So it's really, really expensive. In addition to all that, I recently just went to have my taxes done and found out that self-employed people have to pay more taxes than anyone else in the United States. So let me get this straight. People who are struggling to get a business running have to pay more than people who work for a large company. Why? What if I was opening my own business? What if I was opening a deli and I have no fucking idea how much money I'm going to make? You're gonna actually tax me more? People who are just making investments and working to get a business started, you're going to tax me more than everyone else? That's insane. But that's how it works in the United States. So I have to pay a monstrous amount of money for taxes. Luckily, the money that I've made since I started doing this as a full-time job, I've saved most of it. And so I had just enough to pay these monstrous amount of taxes that I owed the government. So those are some of the pros and cons. I would say some of the pros, obviously, I get to make my own schedule. I get to stay up as late as I want, get up whenever I want, and it's totally based off of my own discipline. So one day if I'm not feeling well, I don't have to make videos, but that also means I'm not going to make money that day. So it's totally based off of me. And I like that. I like that it's my choice whether or not I make money today, as opposed to with the other job, it was like, well, yeah, sure, you get sick days and stuff, but fuck you. If you don't feel good, come in, because if you don't, we're going to fire you, or we can basically make your life miserable. That really sucks, and I hate that mentality. The other thing is, I'm my own boss, so I can do whatever I want. I can make videos on a game, I could do a game review, I could choose to do whatever I want, as long as it's within the criteria of what Machinima is going to pay me for, and therefore, I have a lot of freedom. I really am my own boss right now. I don't have to worry about getting yelled at because I was 5 minutes late. I don't have to worry about this kind of stuff, and I love that. That independent feeling it's a freedom I haven't experienced in my entire working life until I started doing this. So I love it. But yeah, there's pros and cons to everything, and so obviously when I do this longer, I'm going to probably experience even more pros and cons. I think one of the good pros is going to be unlike with my previous job, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now, like buying video games, traveling to go to conventions or video game tournaments and stuff like that, all this stuff can now be written off on my taxes because this is my source of income. And that could dramatically decrease the amount of money that I owe the government next year. But we'll see what happens. So that was a very good question. I know I took a lot of time answering it, but I thought that was a really good question that needed answering. Okay, up next. We've got a question. Dear Phil, I've been noticing a common trend with people who define themselves as retro gamers. Many of them argue that modern games are too often dumbed down compared to games of yesteryear in order to appeal to a mass market. While I have seen in several cases that this is true to an extent, for example, Oblivion and Street Fighter IV come to mind, in many other ways, games are trying to move forward, and in more ways than simply just adding pretty graphics. Do you think this is really a universal trend with modern games, or do you disagree with this argument? And that's from Fly666 Monkey. As you know, I've talked about this before, especially with Street Fighter. Yeah, it's definitely a trend. Games are becoming easier to play because the game developers feel that the easier the game, the more widely it appeals. And I hate to say it, but take a look at the Nintendo Wii. Most of the games for the Wii are shovelware. They're party games where you wave a fucking wand around and you play a minigame, but look how they're selling. They sell like hotcakes. The bottom line is this, there really are two markets for games. There's the casual market, which is huge. The casual market is huge. People that just want to sit down and play games for half an hour a day and fuck around, or maybe play with their kids, or if they have some people over, mess around with it, and that's it. They don't want to make a significant investment of time into video gaming. They just want to have fun for a short period of time. Then you have the hardcore gaming market, which is the absolute flip side. They take their gaming seriously, they want serious content and serious subject matter, they want a game that you invest a significant number of hours in, but you get a reward for it, whether it's great gameplay, great story, great graphics, whatever. So, I can understand why the market is kind of confused with what it wants to do right now. Now what I can say is, thank goodness that there are game developers who are still making serious games. Like if you saw, I would say one of the most difficult games that I've played in the past couple of years, and actually I didn't put it on YouTube, this was right before I started playing games for YouTube, was Lost Odyssey. That game was fucking hard, but it was a very, very traditional JRPG, and it stuck to that formula, it stuck to its guns, and I think the game was outstanding simply because it did that. On the flip side of that, there's a lot of games that are becoming a lot easier, but there are games that are getting longer as well. You know, a game like Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, they're not really necessarily hard to play as long as you figure out the formula for success, but look how long those games are, look how engrossing they are. Or a really good example would be Heavy Rain. That game was very simple to play. You just mess around very simply with the controller and do very simple things, very simple movements, and you can win, or you can, you know, at least proceed in the game. But the story, the characters, the graphics were outstanding, and it really pulled you in, and it was one of the best games of the year. For me, it was the second best game of the year. So, I can see the divergence of paths with gaming. Do I necessarily think that either way is right? Not really. I think you're always going to have your market. Before, I have to say this, before games became as mainstream as they are today, it really was all hardcore gamers. And the hardcore gamers, you had to make the games difficult, but you had to give them enough content. It was really that kind of a deal. Now that the games are becoming more widespread, more mainstream, yeah, if you want to sell more games, you're going to probably want to make your game a little bit easier, but something to hook the person into playing the game as well. So, I don't know, a lot of people would argue, gee, what happened? Call of Duty used to be, you know, a really hardcore series of FPS games for the computer. Then as soon as it hit console, they added things like auto-aim and stuff like that. Now it's so noob-friendly, that's why it sells so much, because any scrub can jump on there and play it for a couple hours, and all of a sudden they're a master of the game. I can see that argument, but at the same time, that game is extremely fun to play. So, there are arguments to either side. Me personally, I like a mix. I like games that are, some games that could be difficult, but it has a good subject matter. At the same time, I like games that are easier, but maybe they're a little bit longer. I mean, Mass Effect series isn't that hard to play, but it's really engrossing, a lot of characters. I don't know. I see both sides of the argument, and I've been on both sides of the fence. I myself, I'm just looking for a game that I enjoy for the most part, and for me that means story, that means characters, that means that kind of stuff, and it's not necessarily just gameplay. So, I don't know. I definitely see the trend, and I don't know if it's necessarily a universal trend, but I think a lot more game developers are doing it to try to sell to a wider audience. Okay, how much time do I have left in this first part? Because I've not even been through page 1 yet. I got about 5 minutes left. Everyone's asking me about the 3DS and what I think about it. I have physically seen the 3DS at a GameStop. I think the 3D effect is amazing, but will become extremely annoying after a while. I did not buy one. Why didn't I buy it? For 2 reasons. Number 1, because I can't film it. You can't film that and put it on YouTube. How would I film a 3DS just like on my regular DS? How would I film that? It would be way too difficult. And number 2, there's no freaking games for it. All the games that came out are stupid. Like, do I really want to play Super Street Fighter 4 on a fucking handheld when I can play it on my big screen TV with great graphics and great controls? It doesn't make sense. And what other games really came out? Nothing good. You know what games I'm looking forward to? Kid Icarus, Zelda, Star Fox. There's a good maybe 4 or 5 games. Resident Evil Mercenaries. That looks good. But those games are out, and they're not coming out for a long ass time. So why the fuck would I rush to buy a 3DS? This is what stumps me with these companies out there. They're all releasing hardware with no good games. When Xbox 360 came out, the only good game for it was Call of Duty 2, right? When PS3 came out, there were very few good games. Like, why are you rushing your console's releases out, or your handheld releases out in this case, with no games to play? Like, really, the system seller for 3DS right now is Super Street Fighter 4. But I don't care. I play that game. If I play it, I'm going to play it competitively. I don't want to play it on a shitty handheld with with wonky controls. I'll play it on my fucking joystick on my TV. So it makes no sense. Yeah, that's my feeling right now. I think that the technology has potential. I think that the games coming out for it in the future look good, but I have no desire to buy it now because there's no games for it. Pretty straightforward. Next question. What was your first video game? And also, what was your first 360 and PS3 game? And that was from Bioptic Pigeon 0. My very first video game, I couldn't answer that question because my very first exposure to video games, I was a very young child, and I was going to my uncle's house, and my uncle used to play video games on his PC all the time. And so he used to play some of the earliest games that were like text-based games, but also some of the classic games like Pitfall. He had an Atari 2600 that eventually I bought an Atari 7800 because I had played on his Atari 2600, and he gave me a lot of his games to play on my Atari 7800. Actually, he gave me, I think the first console I ever owned was he gave me one of those, from the 1970s, one of those Pong consoles, which is pretty much just a rectangular thing that plugs into your TV and it has the 2 knobs that spin, and you just play Pong on it. And it was very basic. Score, 2 paddles, which were just rectangles, and a square that was supposed to be the ball. That's probably the oldest game I owned, but I couldn't tell you what the first video game I ever played was. I was too young, and I must have played it at his house. My first Xbox 360 game was Call of Duty 2, and or Call of Duty 1, whatever the first one was that came out on 360. I apologize, I don't remember which one it was. And my first PS3 game was Uncharted, believe it or not. A lot of people are asking me about mobile gaming and what I think about it. This would fall into the category when I talked about the 2 divergent paths of gaming development right now. The casual gamer. You're not going to see people spending 5 hours straight playing a fucking game on their cell phone. Is it something to be taken seriously? Absolutely, because there's money to be made. Just with the Wii, with their stupid party games, the same thing on the iPhone and stuff like that. Those games could sell and make a lot of money. So, yeah, there's definitely a market for it, and it's definitely big business and should be taken seriously. I personally don't spend time playing games on my cell phone. You know what I mean? Like, they're time killers for me. It's not something that I would spend significant time doing. So, that's that. One last thing before we move on to the next part, because I am out of time. And I'll stop the timer actually now that I saw that. A couple people, Monkey Cloud is one of them, but a couple people have asked me, have I considered getting a DSP app designed for like the iPhone or Android? Monkey Cloud himself pitched the idea that it would basically be an app that gives you updates on the videos that I'm putting out. So when I put out new videos, it would maybe give you an update once or twice a day. Oh, DSP put out 10 videos for Back to the Future today. And so you would say that, oh, I gotta go watch those when I get home, or I can watch it on my phone now. It would be nice. It wouldn't be anything I would look to sell. I don't think that would be something that anyone would want to pay for. It would be nice to have, but I don't think it's anything that's necessary right now. I think that enough people know how to use YouTube to check my page or to check their subscriptions and see on a daily basis, what videos I'm putting out. So other people were like, oh, we want to make a DSP app that has all your sayings and stuff like that, and that's completely different. Maybe that is something people would want to buy, but I'm not an app developer. Obviously, I have no idea how to do that. Actually, Domdai has made a couple apps that he's tried to sell, and I think some of them have been some decent sellers. So, but yeah, I don't have the mind to do that. I went to school for computer programming for 1 semester, and then I fucking dropped it because I thought it was the most boring thing on the planet, and I will never do it. So, interesting question, but I definitely won't be developing an app. If people are interested in doing it for me, or something just to give to people for free, that's something completely different. That might be a consideration. So, alright, that's it for part 1 of Ask the King today. I will be back with part 2. I still have a ridiculous amount of questions to get to, so I'll be right back.